Notre Dame de Paris, French for Our Lady of Paris, also known as Notre Dame Cathedral or simply Notre Dame, is a historic Catholic cathedral on the eastern half of the Ile de la Cité in the 4th arrondissement of Paris, France. The cathedral is widely considered to be one of the finest examples of French Gothic architecture, and it is among the largest and most well-known church buildings in the world. The naturalism of its sculptures and stained glass are in contrast with earlier Romanesque architecture. As the cathedral of the Archdiocese of Paris, Notre Dame is the parish that contains the cathedra, or official chair, of the Archbishop of Paris. Currently Cardinal André Van Gt3. The cathedral treasury is notable for its reliquary, which houses some of Catholicism's most important first-class relics, including the purported crown of thorns, a fragment of the true cross, and one of the holy nails. In the 1790s, Notre Dame suffered desecration during the radical phase of the French Revolution, when much of its religious imagery was damaged or destroyed. An extensive restoration supervised by Eugene Viollet-le-Duc began in 1845. A project of further restoration and maintenance began in 1991. Architecture. The Notre Dame de Paris was among the first buildings in the world to use the flying buttress. The building was not originally designed to include the flying buttresses around the choir and nave, but after the construction began, the thinner walls grew ever higher and stress fractures began to occur as the walls pushed outward. In response, the cathedral's architects built supports around the outside walls, and later additions continued the pattern. The total surface area is 5,500 square meters. Many small individually crafted statues were placed around the outside to serve as column supports and water spouts. Among these are the famous gargoyles, designed for water runoff, and chimeras. The statues were originally colored, as was most of the exterior. The paint has worn off. The cathedral was essentially complete by 1345. The cathedral has a narrow climber, 387 steps at the top of several spiral staircases. Along the climb it is possible to view its most famous bell, and its gargoyles in close quarters, as well as having a spectacular view across Paris when reaching the top. Contemporary critical reception. John of Jandun recognized the cathedral as one of Paris's three most important buildings, prominent structures, in his 1323 treatise on the praises of Paris. Construction history. In 1160, because the church in Paris had become the Parisian Church of the Kings of Europe, Bishop Maurice de Sully deemed the previous Paris Cathedral, Saint-Étienne, which had been founded in the 4th century, unworthy of its lofty role, and had it demolished shortly after he assumed the title of Bishop of Paris. As with most foundation myths, this account needs to be taken with a grain of salt. Archaeological excavations in the 20th century suggested that the Merovingian cathedral replaced by Sully was itself a massive structure, with a 5-aisled nave and a facade some 36 meters across. According to legend, Sully had a vision of a glorious new cathedral for Paris, and sketched it on the ground outside the original church. To begin the construction, the bishop had several houses demolished and had a new road built to transport materials for the rest of the cathedral. Construction began in 1163 during the reign of Louis VII, and opinion differs as to whether Sully or Pope Alexander III laid the foundation stone of the cathedral. However, both were at the ceremony. Bishop de Sully went on to devote most of his life and wealth to the cathedral's construction. Construction of the choir took from 1163 until around 1177, and the new high altar was consecrated in 1182. After Bishop Maurice de Sully's death in 1196, his successor, Eudes de Sully, oversaw the completion of the transepts and pressed ahead with the nave, which was nearing completion at the time of his own death in 1208. By this stage, the western facade had also been laid out, though it was not completed until around the mid-1240s. Over the construction period, numerous architects worked on the site, as is evidenced by the differing styles at different heights of the west front and towers. Between 1210 and 1220, the fourth architect oversaw the construction of the level with the rose window and the great halls beneath the towers. The most significant change in design came in the mid-13th century, when the transepts were remodeled in the latest Renaissance style. In the late 1240s, Jean de Chelles added a gabled portal to the north transept, topped off by a spectacular rose window. Shortly afterwards, Pierre de Montreuil executed a similar scheme on the southern transept. Both these transept portals were richly embellished with sculpture. The south portal features scenes from the lives of Saint Stephen and of various local saints, while the north portal featured the infancy of Christ and the story of Theophilus in the tympanum, with a highly influential statue of the Virgin and Child in the trumue. Timeline of construction: 1160, Maurice de Sully orders the original cathedral demolished. 1163, cornerstone laid for Notre Dame de Paris. Construction begins. 1182, apse and choir completed. 1196, Bishop Maurice de Sully dies. c. 1200, work begins on western facade. 1208, Bishop Eudes de Sully dies. Nave-vaults nearing completion. 1225, western facade completed. 1250, western towers and north rose window completed. c. 1245 to 1260, transept remodeled in the Renaissance style by Jean de Chelles, then Pierre de Montreuil. 1250 to 1345, remaining elements completed. Crypt. The archaeological crypt of the Paris Notre Dame was created in 1965 to protect a range of historical ruins discovered during construction work spanning from the earliest settlement in Paris to the modern day. The crypts are managed by the Musée Carnavalet and contain a large exhibit, detailed models of the architecture of different time periods, and how they can be viewed within the ruins. The main feature still visible is the underfloor heating installed during the Roman occupation. Alterations, vandalism, and restorations. In 1548, rioting Huguenots damaged features of Notre Dame, considering them idolatrous. During the reigns of Louis XIV and Louis XV, the cathedral underwent major alterations as part of an ongoing attempt to modernize cathedrals throughout Europe. A colossal statue of Saint Christopher, standing against a pillar near the western entrance and dating from 1413, was destroyed in 1786. Tombs and stained glass windows were destroyed. The north and south rose windows were spared this fate, however. In 1793, during the French Revolution, the cathedral was rededicated to the cult of reason, and then to the cult of the Supreme Being. During this time, many of the treasures of the cathedral were either destroyed or plundered. The 13th century spire was torn down and the statues of the biblical kings of Judah, located on a ledge on the facade of the cathedral, were beheaded. Many of the heads were found during a 1977 excavation nearby and are on display at the Musée de Cluny. For a time, Lady Liberty replaced the Virgin Mary on several altars. The cathedral's great bells managed to avoid being melted down. The cathedral came to be used as a warehouse for the storage of food. A controversial restoration program was initiated in 1845, overseen by architects Jean-Baptiste Antoine Lassus and Eugene Viollet-le-Duc. Viollet-le-Duc was responsible for the restorations of several dozen castles, palaces and cathedrals across France. The restoration lasted 25 years and included a taller and more ornate reconstruction of the flesh, as well as the addition of the chimeras on the Galerie des Chimères. Viollet-le-Duc always signed his work with a bat, the wing structure of which most resembles the Gothic vault. The Second World War caused more damage. Several of the stained glass windows on the lower tier were hit by stray bullets. These were remade after the war, but now sport a modern geometrical pattern, not the old scenes of the Bible. In 1991, a major program of maintenance and restoration was initiated, which was intended to last 10 years, but was still in progress as of 2010. The cleaning and restoration of old sculptures being an exceedingly delicate matter. Circa 2014, much of the lighting was upgraded to LED lighting. Organ and organists. Though numerous organs have been installed in the cathedral over time, the earliest models were inadequate for the building. The first more noted organ was finished in the 18th century by the noted builder François-Henri Clicquot. Some of Clicquot's original pipework in the pedal division continues to sound from the organ today. The organ was almost completely rebuilt and expanded in the 19th century by Aristide Cavalet-Coll. The position of titular organist at Notre Dame is considered one of the most prestigious organist posts in France. Along with the post of titular organist of Saint-Sulpice in Paris, Cavalet-Coll's largest instrument. The organ has 7,374 pipes, with California 900 classified as historical. It has 110 reel stops, 556 key manuals and a 32-key pedal board. In December 1992, a 2-year restoration of the organ was completed that fully computerized the organ under 3 lands. The restoration also included a number of additions, notably 2 further horizontal red stops enchaînés in the Cavalet-Coll style. The Notre Dame organ is therefore unique in France in having 5 fully independent red stops enchaînés. Among the best-known organists at Notre Dame de Paris was Louis Vian, who held this position from 1900 to 1937. Under his tenure, the Cavalet-Coll organ was modified in its tonal character, notably in 1902 and 1932. Élie Wants de Saint-Martin held the post between 1932 and 1954. Pierre Coquero initiated further alterations, including the electrification of the action between 1959 and 1963. The original Cavalet-Coll console was replaced by a new console in Anglo-American style and the addition of further stops between 1965 and 1972. Notably in the pedal division, the recomposition of the mixture stops, a 32 plenum in the neo-Baroque style on the solo manual, and finally the adding of 3 horizontal red stops, enchaînés, in the Iberian style. After Coquero's sudden death in 1984, 4 new titular organists were appointed at Notre Dame in 1985. Jean-Pierre Leguy, Olivier Latry, Yves Devanay, and Philippe Lefebvre. This was reminiscent of the 18th century practice of the cathedral having 4 titular organists, each one playing for 3 months of the year. Bells. The cathedral has 10 bells. The largest, a manual, original to 1681, is located in the south tower and weighs just over 13 tons and is tolled to mark the hours of the day and for various occasions and services. This bell is always rung first, at least 5 seconds before the rest. Until recently, there were 4 additional 19th-century bells on wheels in the North Tower, which were swing-chimed. These bells were meant to replace 9 which were removed from the cathedral during the Revolution and were rung for various services and festivals. The bells were once rung by hand before electric motors allowed them to be rung without manual labor. When it was discovered that the size of the bells could cause the entire building to vibrate, threatening its structural integrity, they were taken out of use. The bells also had external hammers for tune playing from a small clavier. On the night of the 24th of August 1944, as the Ile de la Cité was taken by an advance column of French and Allied armored troops and elements of the resistance, it was the tolling of the Emmanuel that announced to the city that its liberation was underway. In early 2012, as part of a €2 million project, the 4 old bells in the North Tower were deemed unsatisfactory and removed. The plan originally was to melt them down and recast new bells from the material. However, a legal challenge resulted in the bells being saved in extremis at the foundry. As of early 2013, they are still merely set aside until their fate is decided. A set of 8 new bells was cast by the same foundry in Normandy that had cast the 4 in 1856. At the same time, a much larger bell called Marie was cast in the Netherlands. It now hangs with a manual in the South Tower. The 9 new bells, which were delivered to the cathedral at the same time, are designed to replicate the quality and tone of the cathedral's original bells. Ownership. Under a 1905 law, Notre Dame de Paris is among 70 churches in Paris built before that year that are owned by the French state. While the building itself is owned by the state, the Catholic Church is the designated beneficiary, having the exclusive right to use it for religious purpose, in perpetuity. The Church is responsible for paying the employees, security, heating and cleaning, and assuring that the cathedral is open for free to visitors. The Church does not receive subsidies from the French state. Significant events. 1185. Heraclius of Caesarea calls for the Third Crusade from the still incomplete cathedral. 1239. The crown of thorns is placed in the cathedral by St. Louis during the construction of the Sainte-Chapelle. 1302. Philip the Fair opens the first States General. The 16th of December 1431. Henry VI of England is crowned King of France. 1450. Wolves of Paris are trapped and killed on the parvis of the cathedral. The 7th of November 1455. Isabelle Romay, the mother of Joan of Arc, petitions a papal delegation to overturn her daughter's conviction for heresy. The 1st of January 1537. James V of Scotland is married to Madeleine of France. The 24th of April 1558. Mary, Queen of Scots, is married to the Dauphin Francis, son of Henry II of France. The 18th of August 1572. Henry of Navarre marries Margaret of Valois. The marriage takes place not in the cathedral but on the parvis of the cathedral, as Henry IV is Protestant. The 10th of September 1573. The cathedral was the site of a vow made by Henry of Valois following the interregnum of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth that he would both respect traditional liberties and the recently passed Religious Freedom Law. The 10th of November 1793. The Festival of Reason. The 2nd of December 1804. The coronation ceremony of Napoleon I and his wife Josephine, with Pope Pius VII officiating. 1831. The novel The Hunchback of Notre Dame was published by French author Victor Hugo. The 18th of April 1909. Joan of Arc is beatified. The 16th of May 1920. Joan of Arc is canonized. 1900. Louis Vian is appointed organist of Notre Dame de Paris after a heavy competition against the 500 most talented organ players of the era. On the 2nd of June 1937, Louis Vian dies at the cathedral organ near the end of his 1750th concert. The 11th of February 1931, Antonietta Rivas Mercado shot herself at the altar with a pistol, property of her lover José Vasconcelos. She died instantly. The 26th of August 1944, the Te Deum Mass takes place in the cathedral to celebrate the liberation of Paris. The 12th of November 1970, the Requiem Mass at General Charles de Gaulle is held. The 6th of June 1971, Philippe Petit surreptitiously strings a wire between the two towers of Notre Dame and tightrope walks across it. Petit later performed a similar act between the twin towers of the World Trade Center. The 31st of May 1980. After the Magnificat of this day, Pope John Paul II celebrates Mass on the parvis of the cathedral. January 1996. The Requiem Mass of François Mitterrand is held. The 10th of August 2007. The Requiem Mass of Cardinal Jean-Marie Lustiger, former Archbishop of Paris and famous Jewish convert to Catholicism, is held. The 12th of December 2012, the Notre Dame Cathedral begins a year-long celebration of the 850th anniversary of the laying of the first building block for the cathedral. The 21st of May 2013, around 1,500 visitors were evacuated from Notre Dame Cathedral after Dominique Venner, a historian, placed a letter on the church altar and shot himself. He died immediately. The cathedral is renowned for its Lent sermons founded by the famous Dominican Jean-Baptiste Henri Lacordaire in the 1860s. In recent years, however, an increasing number have been given by leading public figures and state-employed academics. Gallery. The North Transept Rose. Emmanuel, the Great Bourdon Bell, at the Notre Dame de Paris. A wide-angle view of Notre Dame's western facade. Notre Dame's facade showing the Portal of the Virgin, Portal of the Last Judgment, and Portal of Saint Anne. A view of Notre Dame from Montparnasse Tower. A wide-angle view of Notre Dame's western facade. The statue of Virgin and Child inside Notre Dame de Paris. Notre Dame's high altar with the kneeling statues of Louis XIII and Louis XIV. One of Notre Dame's well-known chimera statues. South Rose window of Notre Dame de Paris. Notre Dame at the end of the 19th century. Flying buttresses of Notre Dame. Memorial tablet to the British Empire dead of the First World War. Tympanum of the Last Judgment. Bibliography. Bruzelius, Caroline. The Construction of Notre Dame in Paris. Art Bulletin. 540–569 in JSTOR. Davis, Michael T. Splendor and Peril. The Cathedral of Paris, 1290–1350. The Art Bulletin 80 No. 1 pp. 34–66. Jacobs, J. ed. The Horizon Book of Great Cathedrals. New York City. American Heritage Publishing, 1968. Jansen, H. W. History of Art. 3rd edition. New York City. Harry N. Abrams, Inc., 1986. Myers, Bernard S. Art and Civilization. New York City. McGraw-Hill, 1957. Michelin Travel Publications. The Green Guide, Paris. Hertfordshire, UK. Michelin Travel Publications, 2003. Temco, Alan. Notre Dame of Paris. Tonazzi, Pascal. Florileges de Notre Dame de Paris, Editions Arliacute, Paris, 2007, ISBN 2-86959-7959. Wright, Craig. Music and Ceremony at Notre Dame of Paris, 500-1550.